Adam being the seasoned actor that he is, and Gaga being such an emotional and passionate performer, I think they really kind of learned a lot from each other, actually. And I think Adam is so controlled in a good way. I mean, he's so in control of his instrument, of his acting, and Gaga, could really kind of go from an explosive take to a much more subtle take and really feel the scene as it was happening. So to watch them together was really quite amazing, just in terms of how they were dancing with each other. Uh, and of course, the fact that a lot of the film was shot chronologically, and so you really felt that the relationship was deteriorating as it was happening. And I thought that was a very clever scheduling idea. Rodolfo Gucci is played by Jeremy Irons. He's the patriarch of the family, and even though he's a Gucci and he had a pretty important role in the family business and in the fashion business, he's an actor. He had a career as a pretty successful silent actor. His pseudonym was Maurizio D'Arcora, and he met Maurizio's mother, Alessandra, who was also an actress, while they were filming some of these short films, or silent films rather. And so Rodolfo has a foot in the past. He's a very melancholic man, and he's incredibly protective of Maurizio, who's his only child. And Maurizio's mother passed away when Maurizio was 5 years old, so there's no mother figure in his life. And Rodolfo is very protective to the point where Maurizio feels like really he can't live his life. And that's a big reason why he rebels against his father. Jeremy, in my mind, is the personification of elegance and of dignity, and he can kill you with a look. He has this incredible intensity to him, and there's a scene in the film when Maurizio and Patrizia have lunch with Jeremy, with Rodolfo, and just watching Jeremy watch Patrizia is a masterclass in nuance, because you know what he's thinking. He's thinking that she's not worthy, but he hides it, and he's very charming in that scene. And there's a lot of layers, and I think only an actor of his caliber and of his subtlety could really kind of beef up that role and add so many subtleties to it. Aldo Gucci is played by an upcoming actor named Al Pacino, who really brought the character to life. And Aldo is he's a snake in the grass, really. He's a very jovial, gregarious man who is taking Gucci in the wrong direction. He's obsessed with profit. He's obsessed with his ego, essentially. And that's one of the things that Patrizia identifies in him and in what he's doing, and one of the reasons why Maurizio ultimately betrays him. But he's a fox. If I had to think of an animal for him, he's a very, very charming, sly fox. And Al has a great a sort of explosive charm to him and a friendliness that is great for the role, because it turns quite dark when we ultimately find out what his motivations are and what he's doing. Well, Aldo is a practical person. Aldo realizes in the 70s, for example, that the Asian market is an incredibly big opportunity for Gucci to grow and to expand and to make a lot of money. And that comes at odds, for example, with Rodolfo's view of what Gucci should be, because Rodolfo thinks it's a museum piece. He thinks that it should be a a jewel to be cherished and and cared for, whereas Aldo's a little bit more ruthless about it. Paolo is played by Jared Leto, unrecognizable under a ton of prosthetics. I actually never met Jared, I only met Paolo. Um, and he is Aldo's son. He is a very flamboyant, colorful, failed fashion designer. And he's dying to see his ideas and his creations come to life. And finally, he wants some sort of recognition for who he is. And he's always been put down by his father and by the family. And when he tries desperately to convince Rodolfo to give him a chance and Rodolfo mocks him, that's the turning point in his character. And that's when he decides he's going to start Paolo Gucci, which is his line. And he's comic, but tragic at the same time. And what Jared did with that character was really infuse him with a kind of a pathetic soul and a sense of emotion that I think was very moving, actually. So Jared would wake up at 4 in the morning every day, and he would spend 5 hours in makeup, and he would come on set as Paolo, and he would leave as Paolo, and he would talk to me as Paolo. And to this day, I only receive emails from Paolo. I don't actually communicate with Jared. Um, but his attitude was completely a full commitment. And the thing that I really admired the most about him was he loved this character. He respected this character. He didn't mock him. He didn't demean him in any way. He didn't find humor out of his failings. He took him very seriously, and I think that humor comes out of that, out of the fact that he's delusional, but it doesn't come out of making fun of the character. And I think Jared had the sensitivity to really honor him, and I think he did some incredible work. Pina is played by Salma Hayek. Um, Pina is a psychic who, in the movie, Patrizia phones in to. Pina has this show, late night sort of psychic show. And Patrizia calls because she's an insomniac and she's just eating a tub of ice cream, and she calls in, and they immediately connect. They have this kind of almost like a psychic connection, and they become best friends. It's all about betrayal, and it's all about what people are doing behind the scenes to each other and how they're manipulating each other. Um, and I think there's a lot of great things that they did. I mean, obviously the movie focuses on some of the more salacious details, but the empire, the Gucci empire, is something that truly represents a lot of Italian uh, a lot of Italian culture in the 20th century. I mean, it started in the late 1800s and went on till now. So it's a very important piece of Italian history and of fashion history. The love story at the beginning is a really honest and truthful one, and it's an intimate story. There's no family members involved. There's no media, and that's the section in the film that I think really sells that the relationship is genuine, and that Patrizia truly did fall in love with this man. As the family members enter the canvas, enter the stage, and she realizes that there's an amazing boon to be had in becoming the king and the queen of Gucci. It's a classic story of greed. Greed not only consumes her, it consumes him, it consumes Maurizio, and it consumes the relationship because they can no longer trust each other. Well, I think it's a film that really has its toes in different genres. It's a movie. If you like crime thrillers, it's a crime thriller. It's a fashion gangster movie in a way. It's a love story gone horribly wrong. Um, it's a snapshot of 20 years of fashion, and if you love fashion and you want to see the Italian scene in the 80s, which is really where all those great designers came from, the Versaces and the Armanis and the Ferrés, um, it's also a time machine, and it brings you back to that time. So it's the wonderful thing about it is that it really kind of taps onto different things, and it doesn't feel like we were constrained to just one genre. Well, I think because Ridley's a painter, and not only is he a masterful director, he's also a painter, and the amount of detail that goes into every frame and every location and every costume is incredible. And I think it's important to honor that and to really give the film the kind of attention that it deserves. Um, and we don't really see movies like this one anymore. It's an experience. It's like a wonderful meal, and you want to really sit down and enjoy it and have a glass of wine with it, and really feel like like you're in Italy in the 70s and the 80s again. Well, I think it runs the gamut emotionally, and I think you're left with a real sense of loss and a kind of a bittersweet um, feeling of how love sometimes can take really tragic, unexpected turns. And in that sense, as I described earlier, it has this kind of Shakespearean grandiosity and depth. Um, when you read Romeo and Juliet, I don't think you leave feeling good about love, but you definitely feel, and I think that's the key, that the movie really is going to make people feel a lot. It's the quintessential Italian story about the quintessential Italian fashion brand, and the the details in the locations and the food and the lighting and the costumes, everything is so reflective of Italy. And one of the most fun things for me was watching all these cars come back to life, these amazing sports cars and things that I had written as a fanboy, as a car enthusiast, and all of a sudden, right there in front of me was the Lamborghini Countach or the Alfa Romeo Spider or the Fiat, and so I think Italy is such a rich country in terms of its arts and its culture. So this really is also an homage to that, um, an ode to Italian creativity in a sense.